Hello and welcome to the Relevate Defence Community YouTube channel. I'm Avon and this is James. So today we're going to be talking about ASDEFCON and what it is, why you need it, why it's important, and how it impacts businesses going to market in the defence space. Welcome, James. How are you going?
Good, Avon. Good. Glad to be here.
Tell us a bit more about your experience, your history with defence and contracting. We'll see what unfolds from that.
Sure. I've got about a 20-year career in and around defence industry. So 10 years in uniform, about 10 years out of uniform. And in that time out of uniform, I've worked across 3 different defence businesses. So 2 defence primes and a small going to medium enterprise as a specialist service provider. During my time in defence industry, I've worked in project management and program management on business development and growth within the defence primes, as well as in supply chain and Australian industry capability.
Fantastic. And it's great to have you here to talk to us today. I think, one of the things that we identified was that there's a lot of content on the defence community online, but it's so hard to extract any kind of value out of it without reading through, hundreds of white papers that are, 500 to 1,000 pages long, going through, 300 to 500 government websites to figure out what you're supposed to do, when and where. And then this stuff is constantly changing. And so one of the things we wanted to do was just really distill down a high level approach to kind of give the impression and thinking behind a lot of the defense activities to just kind of create a bit of a simpler pathway. There are some timeless things that if you learn them, that's going to make a lot of sense. Or if you understand the rules and then you can understand how to deal with changes that happen within those rules. So today, largely, we're going to be talking about ASDEFCON. So do you want to just give us a breakdown? The Army loves, or the Defence Force loves their acronyms. Can you tell us what that is?
This one's a cracker, and it doesn't mean what you think it means when you read it, if going by normal sort of defence vernacular. But ASDEFCON is the Australian standard for defence contracting. And what that is, essentially, is just a series of contract templates that allow defence and government to go out to industry and have a somewhat standardised format for procurement for everything from a brand new frigate or huge capability system, all the way down to minor procurement, so that there are standard legal frameworks within there that defence can get people to answer questions in the way they want to process the complex information.
And I seem to recall in my looking for research and information around getting into government contracts and trying to figure out how it all works. There were many boring parliamentary sittings, and one of which was where it was like an hour and a half long, where it said something about the contracts are really long and convoluted and expensive and quite cost prohibitive for small to medium enterprise to actually get into the market. They don't have $1 million to throw it in lawyers' fees just to read through a lot of the documentation. And so one of the things that they talked about at that time was building like you said, a series of templates, a infrastructure where they could just click through a set of sequences, and it would add a whole bunch of terms. Are you dealing with this type of material? Are you working with that type of products? Are you dealing with international trade or just local? And that would help build out the contract. So is that your understanding, or how do you see that initiative is played out?
So there seems to be within defence procurement this revolving door of good ideas that always focuses around trying to simplify. ASDEFCON, I use simplify because it's never really that simple. It just changes. I think the concept of having a standardized set of templates that people can view ahead of time has a lot of merit. Where it sort of comes unstuck is that because they have to, in the defence procurement side, they feel they have to kind of have an answer to every question or have every question available for everyone all the time, that just makes it really, really cumbersome for anyone to get involved. And to give some context, even in a defense prime, if they were to have a procurement team or a bid team, that could be 20, 25 people who are all specialists in their own area, that would still take anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months to put together the right level of information to answer the mail. And quite often, one of the most common questions that gets asked in those bid teams is, what the heck, or expletive, are they asking for here? Because it's incredibly complex, and the wording doesn't always make sense because it comes from a standardized template that they've just tried to tailor. So that's another area where it really gets missed, is that a standardized template is great for the standardized procurement, but nothing in defense is ever standard. So the tailoring that's required to get that out there can introduce a lot more uncertainty and problems for people trying to answer those questions.
And I think if you zoom out and look at the motivations of each party in that contract, government are all about ass covering exercises. They want to not get in trouble, not get sued, not get lose their political battle, and or lose their job. And so a lot of times they ask for a lot of things just in case we need them, which, like the opposite of a business owner, where time is money. And if I'm not working on this opportunity, I have to work on that opportunity. And which one do I spend my time on? They're a finite resource. Everything is generally out of their own pocket or out of a number of shareholders. But the business owner is thinking more minimum viable product. I don't want to spend time writing this document or doing this thing if I don't need to. I'm just going to do the essential items and move forward with that. And so I think there's this butting of heads between the two departments. The government are asking for excessive things that are completely unnecessary, and they have endless time because no matter what, their job, their salary is going to continue to flow. Whereas the business owner is taking a risk and they're putting themselves out there to try and, maybe win this contract. If they do, it's going to be really good for the most part, if it's managed well and if it's budgeted effectively. But if not, it can be really quite damaging. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on business. Maybe it basically wipes out the willingness to try and approach these sorts of things. And one of the things that we want to do here is try to unmuddy the waters as much as we can, so we at least know what to expect. Do you have any reflections on that?
I think I just want to pull on a thread there that talks about that government arse covering, because of course, that's where they're coming from, and that's totally understandable, especially with something that is as complex as procuring a new capability for the ADF. Is they want to make sure that they've got all the information that they might need to make their decision. And by having a standardized template, you can then look at, well, if it's Raytheon or Boeing or Northrop Grumman or Lockheed that are all submitting these different proposals, you can at least have the opportunity there to compare apples with apples, for lack of a better term. The real difficulty comes from the fact that to answer those approaches to market, it takes a dedicated team to do that. So fine for big business where they have large amounts of money available for new business investment or new business funding. But when it goes down to a small business or a medium business, where the same people who are delivering on current contracts are the ones that are going to have to write this bid response, well, they're losing money that they don't necessarily have or don't necessarily have coming in to answer these questions. So one of the incentives within the big businesses like Raytheon or Boeing, is making sure that they are tailoring the subcontract information to exactly what they need. The trouble there is it takes individuals and effort to do that. And then there's a whole issue around, are they tailoring it to achieve a specific outcome? Are they tailoring it or dumbing it down to go to a specific supplier that is maybe known to the team, which that is another can of worms that I don't think we want to open today, but that's caused a lot of problems. So I think what we can really do here is take some of those big concepts and give hopefully the businesses and the business owners who are watching this and listening to this, the so what. What does that mean for me, so that they can cut out that potentially months or of churn time to go, okay, I know what I need to do now to break into that market, because the barriers are very high. And I think we've got an opportunity to reduce some of those barriers by providing good information.
Well, we talk about how people tend to go about it. They're probably, if you're a small business owner, you're flat out trying to run your enterprise, and small businesses up to 50 million revenue. So that as classified by the Australian government. So even if you've got, quite a large revenue, you've got a bit of a team, just the brain space it takes to even just sit and contemplate whether or not you are going to enter the defense market takes a long time. And this whole approach to, like you said, the so what, the TLDR, too long didn't read, don't want to go spend, a year sitting back and kind of like doing a bit of research and then hitting this wall of content to go, are we actually going to make an attempt here? And then when you do get to that decision point, then you still have to do a whole bunch more research just to get to the point where you can even attempt to submit to government. So by distilling that down into, right, step one, do this, step two, do that, and then you'll be 80% of the way. Now go and work out, are you going to do this or are you going to do that? And I think from the ASDEFCON framework, that whilst a template, one of the things is, what are the levels of contracts? So how complex are you going to go in? And in today's modern warfare, it's moving so fast. We've got to be extremely scrappy, almost startup-like. Look in Ukraine, they're doing drones, $200 drones from, basically Walmart or equivalent, and strapping a grenade from a 3D printer. So that warfare has had to evolve really, really quickly. And then Russia's response to that is put rubber on the outside of the tanks and put cages and nets. And then that had to go through a little bit of a procurement cycle to do it effectively. At the start, it's bits of plywood 2x4 and chicken wire. Like there's a continuum of effort, and to what level do you actually go to with the contract? What's the grading? Obviously, it's different if you're going to do a fighter jet as opposed to if you're going to do a new pair of boots. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on like where they should land?
Are we talking for business or for defense?
Either. If you've got perspective on
well,
both.
I think that there is going to need to be a significant change in the way defense does procurement. They need to look at min viable product or min viable capability, but ASDEFCON doesn't. There's no provision in ASDEFCON for that, which is problematic. So the discussion that I've had when I was working at some of these defense primes is, well, we want to get stuff out quickly, because you've got a lot of people who have experience in defense, who have experience as the warfighter. They know what it's like to be on the end of something that took too long, cost too much, doesn't actually do what you asked for in the first place, and now doesn't meet the requirements because those are 10 years old, which is hugely problematic. And as an example, the E7 Wedgetail in the picture behind me, that's the most advanced airborne early warning and control platform in the world. It's still, some of those components are still 1990s technology that are in that, because that's how defense procurement worked. It has to be, tested and ruggedized and worked, proven to work again and again and again. But that doesn't serve the purpose of doesn't serve the warfighter and defense in general when things are changing far too quickly. So I think there should be some sort of balance point there where, yes, if you have chosen, okay, for the next fighter aircraft that Australia procures after the F-35, okay, that's long lead time, yes, complex, yes, all of those big templates. But if you need, so from the Australian perspective, if you need 100 of something for an Air Force unit or an Army unit to go and do a job, well, I don't think the strategic procurement model works there. maybe that is best served as more of a military off-the-shelf or commercial off-the-shelf and adapted by a defence prime. That's again another can of worms that is very political, because some of those things serve the Australian industry and some of them don't, and that's going to be probably a point for debate in political circles until the end of time.
Well, like if we think about what's the impact of a lot of this stuff, you're talking about the jet with 90s technology. I was rocking around in a 60-year-old M113 armored personnel carrier, and when they decided to upgrade them, they cut the body, extended a little bit, put an extra wheel on and a newer engine and a little bit of a turret upgrade. But then now it's still an old machine, old conceptually in terms of what it is, and not that much better. I mean, yeah, it fulfills a role, does a job. Now, obviously, we've got these larger IFVs and things coming through now. The Bushmasters have proven to work. They work for moving. They don't necessarily work so well for fighting. But in any case, we've got to look at the change and the speed of change now. Like everybody's the AI is the magical fairy dust that sprinkled on everything, but AI is now in design. So when designing equipment, it can move faster. So the contract process is going to become more and more the bottleneck. Like now you've got engineering programs that can find the stress points and find the efficient amount of steel, can find the how the blast impact is going to happen when a projectile hit and different types of projectiles hit the surface. So a lot of that stuff can be forecasted without having to go to, making a million prototypes and trying to blow them up. So obviously the cost of production comes down, but again, the contract side is still no faster, really. So I guess just to get a grasp on it. So how does it go from defense needs something to then seeing it on their tender websites?
Right. So we'll go with the complex version because that's just the long lead time stuff. So there are project teams within, I'll use Air Force as an example. There's the Future Air Combat Capability project team. And what they look at is, okay, we've got F-35 now. We know that we have roughly, call it maybe 15 to 20 years service life in that, on a good day, to be honest, with how quickly things are changing now. What are the problems that are coming down the road? What can we see we're going to need in the future? And they start to develop a list of requirements or engineering or performance requirements within that project team. That is years ahead of anything going out to tender. So as that progresses, we jump forward a bit, they'll go, okay, we know we've now got roughly this budget for air, 7,000 X, whatever it might be. You might see those project names come up, air, land, sea joint, with numbers after it. All that is the defense program identifier to acquire new equipment. So they'll get a chunk of money, which you'd see in any other the defense procurement guidelines or the defense spending guidelines that come out every few years. So for that, they know they have call it $100 million for the initial lot, and that's an irrelevant amount of money. Once they've got that, they go, okay, requirements fit into budget, and then they'll write the tender. So we need to have this performance specification. That will then drive, okay, what level of complexity do we need to put around that contractually? Then that'll go out and they'll go, okay, we need a fighter aircraft that does, 1 through 6,000 things, performs to these levels, the functional performance specification. Then they'll wrap a contract vehicle around that. So for example, that would probably fall under ASDEFCON strategic materiel, because it is a procurement of a brand new system with all of the support architecture and infrastructure around it. Once they've got that they try sometimes poorly to turn functional performance specification and engineering functionality into a series of requirements documents that then go out as a strategic material request for tender, or RFT. That's when you'll see it on the website. Within that, There may be levels of security classification that, okay, the top level documents are unclassified, but then it gets classified very, very quickly, which we'll probably talk about security clearances and what that means later on. But you could see that could be between idea and document on the tender's website, on the AusTender website. That could be a decade there, which is hugely complex. What you'll see is in that there's a whole bunch of what they call, I suppose, tailoring and modifying the standard template to try and achieve the aim that they want with that contract. So some things I've seen before is they might pick up 2 templates and go, actually, for the acquisition side of this contract, we need to use X template. But for the support and in-service sustainment portion of this, because they'll go out as 2 separate contracts, we need something else. And there is where I've seen a lot of issue is sometimes those things can contradict themselves because they have different requirements in terms of the complexity of information. For example, you might have 1,000 pages of documents that you have to submit for a strategic material. Of that, maybe 20% of that is the actual technical engineering solution. But around that, the other 80% are all the risk management, governance, project management, finance, costing, environmental stuff, support to different businesses, support to Australian industry. The requirements in that might differ to another set of documents that actually only have 60% required for the governance, and the engineering solution takes up a bigger portion of that. So that's another area where even big business struggles, is because why would they want to invest time, effort, and money into generating a suite of documents that will be irrelevant past the first 12 months? So there's some complexities there.
Well, yeah, I mean, because the original question was like, how long does it take to get to the website? But then once it makes it to the website, then they've got to give like X amount of money or expression of interest. Then once they have people register that, then they've got to send out the info pack and then get people to respond to that. Then they've got to get the first round, like, do you have all these things? And then here's what we actually want, come back with a bid. And like that, there's another like 12 to 18 months. And, like ideally defense should be able to rock up and pick up the phone, like to Boeing or something and go, we want 200 jets ASAP yesterday. And I think that can happen once they've been like signed off to say that this is the approved product. But again, like even then there's a timeline, perhaps agreed pricing. And then if all of a sudden they go, we want 200, then maybe that they can't actually ramp up for that. And there's a lot of other costs that go into all of that sort of stuff, like the pre-work on the contract management. The company that's doing the supply might need to build another facility. They might need to hire another 1,000 staff or something like that. So like, can governments move fast when they need to? If you look back to World War II, they had it was the Sten gun, and it was basically drawn on the back of a napkin. It had like 50 components. They went to a toy manufacturer that had the ability to stamp metals and things like that, and he basically redrew it to 11 components, and that really simplified it. And then they were able to pump out thousands of these things, and it was like extremely short manufacture time, extremely fast. It was very basic. The weapons often failed, clogged up with mud, but they needed volume out on the marketplace. They didn't need like amazingly high quality. I think sometimes the R&D part is really good, but then hyper complexity of materials means that your supply chain is so massively at risk. So you've kind of got to create a balance of, can we just build simple things really fast? Sometimes that can be a selling point, I would say, to defense. Obviously, it's a bit different between a jet to a pair of boots. But, like these, I think, are things that businesses need to be thinking about. Is even if you have a simple product, it could be fine. Like, don't call yourself out of the running. The average small to medium business that is approaching defense, probably not going to go and build a fighter jet. They might build the washers that go on the wheels. But, doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. It just means the process is convoluted.
Absolutely,
All right. So,
absolutely. And as another example, the on the wedge tail, when we got the call up to go to the Middle East the first time, there had been probably 18 months to 2 years worth of work to acquire through the normal program and procurement channels a new communication system. And in that 2 years, a bunch of money was spent on research and design and with industry, without industry involvement, and it didn't work. They tried to install it in a test vehicle and it didn't work. Then when the balloon went up and they said, "Hey, we're going in 6 weeks," they went, "Well, we can't go without X equipment," and it went from years long to a weeks long. Find, ask for the thing you want, ask for what you need, buy it, install it, test it, go. So defense can move very quickly when the demand is there. I think quite often the demand isn't realized at the right level, which drives these very long procurement timelines for probably overly complex. You don't need to do everything all in the one contract as far as I'm concerned, but they seem to want to because that's how the funding comes.
well, I think we alluded to this, but like going from the defense prime to the small business, like what's the chain? Like the timeline is then extended once defense hands over to a prime or to a major contractor who's going to run it. Then they've got to get their backside into gear. So what's the chain of events that happens there?
So it starts even earlier than that. When you see the whether it's an expression of interest or invitation to register or request for proposal or tender on the website, the primes are already at that point engaging with their sub-tier supply chain to look at who do they have in their back pocket to go, all right, we know this. We know things are always going to need a training system. We know things are always going to need, things like generators and like vehicles and all those sorts of things. So there's a lot of common things that exist across all domains within defense. But what you'll see is that, say we go from, all right, RFT comes out on the website, so request for tender. Prime, whoever decides, yes, we are going to bid for this, they'll then look at all the documents and go, okay, we know we can do, say could be 30 things in there they need to do. They can do 25 themselves. They know they can do that. They go, okay, we actually want to use Australian small business to do A, B, C, D, E of these last 5 things. They'll then go out to start canvassing their supply network and take the big 500-page tender document and pull out the little bits. Well, they should do this. Pull out the little bits that go, okay, we need a training system for this. So we know we've got 5 different training system providers or designers on our preferred supplier list. They'll then go, okay, pull out the bit that talks about training. What are those requirements? And what they should do, and again, this part takes human effort, which sometimes is too much. They may just copy and paste the whole thing and go, hey, respond to this. But what a good prime will do is take those bits, give them to all 5 suppliers and go, this is the information. This is us reading between the lines to know this is the information we need from you. So you may see it as just they picked up the support documentation and sent you 200 pages to your business, in which case you'll go, I have no idea where to even start. What they ideally should do is go, here's the 3-page extract with the exact clauses and things we need you to provide information on. Please do it in this format. And so hopefully then the training provider or the training designer can go, great, I know how to answer all those things. I know how we do training design. I know how we do quality management. I know how we support our local industry. I know how we use digital tools in training. They can just write that away, send it back. Then the prime can do those sort of things, all the things they need to do. What is really important is, regardless of how that comes to you as a small business or a medium business, I cannot stress this enough. Read the question. Read the effing question. Because ultimately, if you provide, if you spend 6 weeks developing a response that doesn't answer the question, that helps no one. So read the question and ask questions back, because that's something that I think that a lot of small suppliers don't realize that they can do, is if they've got information, then contact the supply chain person who gave you the document and go, hey, what do you need here? I want to provide a response that meets your needs, and start to work on that, because it's a two-way street, really, there. If they're not giving you the information you need to answer, then you can't answer with the information they need to put into the final response.
I think that, like, as particularly small business, everyone wears so many hats. Everyone's focusing on so many things. So by the time you've read through, your 100th page, your eyes are glazed over, and you look at the question, you give your one-liner because you can't be bothered. You're already tired. I think, like you said, read the question, answer the question. Maybe we'll go more into what a good response is, but just at a high level, like, does your thermal sensor meet this requirement? And then you could go in to say, our thermal sensor has been proven in, over the last 5 years in these products. Here is some the quality document or the product statement that comes with it, and we intend to use this particular one that we've designed, we've R&D'd, and blah 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 blah. There is absolutely no way that they're going to refute that. They're just going to look at how much evidence you've supported that one particular question and go, oh, well, definitely met the criteria and then some. So I think that, people need to think a little bit about that. But anyway, we're getting close to the end. I think we want to keep to the promise of TLDR. This is short, sharp, and punchy, good enough for a car ride. So if you're thinking and you're in between your thoughts and your travels, whack on these podcasts and just really consume, all the little details and things that you need to know about getting into the defense industry. So before we end the session today, can you just give us your top 3 tips to be competitive in the marketplace?
Absolutely. Read the question. That is absolutely number 1. Read the question. Number 2, I would say, is understand your own capability and how to communicate that. So many times when I've done these procurement processes, we'll go, okay, we roughly know that these 3 companies will be able to do the job based on our previous experience with them, or with what we've seen with them with competitors and other products. But if 2 out of 3 of those go, here is a bunch of fluff around our company and where, we started here and this is our history and all that sort of thing, but they don't say, here is how our product meets the specification, then it's immediately discounted. So understand your company and your capability and how to communicate that as efficiently as possible. And the third one would be ask questions. Ask questions of the prime that you are subcontracting into, because if you understand their needs and they understand your needs, then together you're going to be able to put together a better product, which is going to improve your competitive advantage as the small company. But if they can then just lift and shift the right information into the big proposal, that's going to increase their chance of a win as well, which benefits everyone. So read the question, understand your product and capability, and then ask plenty of questions back the other way. It's not a one-way street.
Excellent. Well, if you've been watching this and you think that this has been helpful, then there's going to be a heap more content. We've got an online community for the defense, for the Relevate defense community. So if you go to the link defense.relevate.com.au, then there's heaps more guides, there's courses, there's more content like this, and you can ask more questions. So if you're stuck on something, join a community of people who are also trying to break into the defense industry, learn from each other, pose questions, share experiences, and get access to highly skilled individuals like James here. So thank you very much for watching. We hope to see you in the next episode. Otherwise, you take care.